that is the beginning of a little piece called Sheep and Goat Walk into the Pasture. This music comes from the collections of silent film orchestra musicians. That one from the Grauman Theater collection that belonged to the Grauman Theater chain in the Los Angeles area. My name is Rodney Sauer, and the Niles Film Museum has asked me to prepare a score for Mabel's Adventure. This is a split reel subject, which meant that half of it was Mabel's Adventure and the other half, in this case, was a piece called Useful Sheep. So because it's about sheep, I picked a piece called Sheep and Goat. We'll see if that works. I actually haven't seen the film yet, but once it comes, I will try this out, and if it works, I will keep it in there. If you remember nothing else from this talk, what I want you to know is that in the silent film era, music was a local concern. It was up to the theater what music to play. There was not a score that came out with the film that you were expected to use with the film. Sometimes there might be a title song. Mabel Normand kind of started this trend early on with her film Mickey. Mickey came out with sheet music tie-in called Mickey, and you could play the Mickey theme song. I actually met someone whose mother had the job of dressing up as Mabel Normand and performing the Mickey song before the film was shown at one local theater, and she kept the name Mickey as a nickname the rest of her life. So there were sometimes tie-ins to music, but generally the music was entirely up to the local musicians. Now, there are three ways to score a film. Composed scores, improvised scores, and compiled scores. Composed scores are what we're familiar with from modern Hollywood, where a composer sits down and writes brand new music for an entire film. This is rather labor intensive and takes a long time. There are almost no composed scores for silent films. There just wasn't time. The industry didn't really support it. If your movie was only showing in your theater for a week, you didn't have time to write brand new music for an entire film, and then you would probably never use it again. So those are pretty much a feature of post-1929 films. An improvised score is where the pianist or organist sits down, watches the film with the audience in the theater, and comes up with music to play. And this can be extremely effective, and it is probably the most common form of accompaniment used today in silent film screenings, certainly live screenings. It was not as common in the silent era, partly because improvisation was not taught as a skill. Improvisation was making its way into popular jazz music, but it was not a common skill. So you had to figure out how it worked pretty much on your own, which I'm sure a lot of musicians did, especially at theaters where the program changed every day. But that was not considered, a high form of accompaniment at the time. Despite how beautiful it can be. The other problem with an improvised score is that it's pretty much limited to a pianist or an organist, or perhaps joined by a violinist or a drummer. Once you get larger than that, it's very hard to improvise because all the musicians have to agree on where they're going, and it gets chaotic pretty quickly. And the premium showings of a silent film were considered at the time to be those that were done with an orchestra. So if you can't compose, you can't improvise with an orchestra. The third kind of film score was a compiled score. And for a compiled score, you have a big library of music, and you watch the film, and for each scene in the film, you choose a piece from your library, and you lay those out, and you've got a score, and you perform the score, and at the end of the week when the movie goes on, you take all those pieces and you put them back in your library because you can use them again later. So you'd have music for storms, music for fights, music for love scenes, music for whatever you need. For instance, here's a book that was published for piano by the Jacobs Company. You see at the top it says Modern Melodies of Merit for the Photoplay Pianist. In the corner, Modern Movie Music. And this is their folio of music for Oriental, Spanish, and Indian music. So if you have a film that requires Oriental music, here's a book. You pull it out. Maybe there's a scene where the Indians are having a war dance or a ceremony, and go ahead and you've got your music. It's already written, it's already arranged. Interestingly, all of this music was available for full orchestra as well as for small orchestras, as well as for solo piano. So if I'm putting my score for Mabel's Adventure together from This Kind of Music. If someone came to me and said, I would like to have that score for my symphony orchestra, I could say, yeah, I'll have that for you in 2 days. Because all I need to do is go pull the music, copy the string parts, the woodwind parts, the percussion parts, mark them up, and my score's done. So this was kind of an industrial assembly method of creating film scores, but it was probably the most common kind of film score done in the silent era. They are very rarely revived today, and partly that's because the music went out of print in 1929, and it can be hard to find. And also, a lot of people just don't know about it. So I am actually working at this time on creating a starter kit of photoplay music. If you are a musician and curious about this stuff, call me or send me an email. You can find me online if you look for the Mont Alto Motion Picture Orchestra. There's only one of them. And also, if you're interested in this music, just to hear more of what the finest photoplay music sounds like, Mont Alto has recorded a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays. We have recorded a number of CDs just of the music excerpted, including our most recent Entreaty, which is love themes from the silent film cinema. And those are all available from our website, but also through the Niles Museum Film Bookstore. I'm going to go out. Here's another book that I might use for this show. This is published by Bellwin, which is a company that's still around today, but it was actually formed in the late teens to present silent film music because that was such a huge industry and business that publishing companies did very well. This is their book of dramatic agitados and, dramatics and pathetics. So I'm going to play a little bit of a pathetic andante by Paul Vili. Paul Vili was a pseudonym of Saul P. Levy, Levy being the L in the Bellwin Company. Thank you.